I hope y'all had a great holiday. Um, and we got a packed agenda today, so I just want to get us started and just share what that is. So, first of all, the um, agenda as well as the slides are in the chat if you want to follow along with us today. We're also streaming live on YouTube as well. Um, so today we'll have the lead poisoning prevention presentation, followed by um, some AI guidance and feedback. And then we'll wrap up with budget updates and the Q&A on the budget. And then from there, we'll get started with some general announcements and updates from Baltimore City Health Department. Again, thank you all for joining us, and I'll turn this over to Naya. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'll stop sharing if you need to share.
Okay, yeah, I'll share my I'm only allocated 10 minutes, so I'm probably gonna not speed through, but concise, be concise. Give me 1 second. Okay, can you all see this?
Yes.
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 Okay, let me get here. And I also want to turn my video on. Okay. All right, so just to reintroduce myself, my name is Nia Jackson. I am the Community Health Educator 3 from the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program with the Baltimore City Health Department. And today it's my first meeting here, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about lead and lead poisoning and the congruency that has with academic success in our children. And yeah, let's just hop right into it. And at the end, I'm also just want to touch on the importance of forming partnerships with parents and school system administration as well. Okay, give me 1 second. All right, so what is lead? It is a naturally occurring element in our environment, and it can be found in our water, air, soil, and in our homes. And in some ways, it is beneficial, but with anything, with overconsumption or inhalation, it can be highly toxic to humans. So, lead-based paint was used in our homes, in homes built before 1978, before it was banned because of those negative properties. So lead dust, a byproduct of lead paint, is formed by friction with closing doors and closing and opening windows. And it is mostly found on floors and windowsills, presenting itself as paint dust. Being that lead is used in so many ways in common items and applications, it is easier for exposure and poisoning to occur. So what is lead poisoning? It occurs when there's an overabundance of lead present in the body due to high levels of exposure, and it can happen when it's consumed or inhaled from the environment on a frequent basis. Who is largely at risk? Children. Children are largely at risk because their bodies absorb more of it than adults do, and it directly affects their growth and nervous systems. And it is also dangerous for pregnant women because the exposure can directly affect the developing baby. So, how do children get it? What are the ways that it is accessible to them? It can be transferred to clothes, toys, and other surfaces accessible to children. And when I say it, I mean lead dust. So when children touch these items, the lead dust can easily be swallowed, consumed, or inhaled, and lead poisoning can occur over time. And in very young children, the children that aren't able to walk yet, crawling on the floor is a hazard because lead dust can be swallowed when they put their hands and toys and food in their mouths. from the cross-contamination you get from being on the floor. Next. So an interesting fact about lead, just to get away from lead dust, lead paint and lead chips are sweet. So children tend to go back wanting more and more and more because it's sweet. And it's very interesting because it's such a negative thing to be sweet to children. And yeah, they just love it. Unfortunately, that sounds bad, but they love it when they get their hands on it. So, to go back to the chips, the lead chips, chipping, peeling, and flicking paint can be present on windowsills and wells, window and door frames, wooden trim, porches, and balconies. Um, Anywhere that friction can occur, which creates the lead dust when opening those windows and doors. A few more common areas you can find lead outside dirt and dust, water pipes, which is why there's a kind of a need to test the water with DPW and those processes. Old vinyl mini blinds, parents' employment, such as construction, carpenter, painter, uh, places of employment that deal directly with paint and materials that can come in contact with lead or that have lead. Lead solder, which is used for stained glass making or in old pipes. Imported goods, jewelry, pottery, cosmetics, and things of that nature. And this is because regulations and standards can be different in countries that are not the US, such as India or places of that nature where just the regulations are a little bit more relaxed than ours. Pool cue chalk and some sidewalk chalks, incense, and with incense, the lead is in the ashes that fall when you burn it, ammunition, fishing sinkers, and pellets. These are just some visuals of some of the things that I just talked about as far as construction, children being outside, pipes, mini blinds, pottery, the incense ash, the solder used for stained glass making, which is this little spoil of wire, and then the pool cue chalk. Some signs that can be present in children that are experiencing lead poisoning can be headaches, excessive sleeping or hyperactive behavior, loss of appetite, abdominal pain, cramps, vomiting, constipation or diarrhea, loss of interest in playing, excessive crankiness, convulsions, clumsiness, aggressive behavior, and lack of focus. And this is not an exhaustive list. And sometimes you might not pick up on these things right away, but with time you can, especially with patterns. So this is a little visual I created to show some of those things in certain parts of the body. Hearing damage, nausea, stomach aches, kidney issues or complications, reproductive complications, muscle and joint pain, speech delay, nerve disorders, and a few neurological implications such as concentration problems, low impulse control, learning disabilities, maybe a lower IQ, headaches, and dizziness. And this is across the board with boys and girls. And a lot of these issues present themselves when the lead poisoning goes unaddressed and can show up in your adult life as well if it goes undiagnosed. So steps to prevent lead poisoning, this is kind of extensive, so I'm just going to brush over these things and speak about the things that are in bold. Make sure your home is lead safe. Check your home, especially if you live in a home built before 1978. You can have it checked by a licensed lead inspector. Check your drinking water to take steps to reduce or eliminate exposure. Contact your water provider to find out if you have a lead service line that is connected to your home. And then renovate safely. Make sure you're not on the property when renovations are happening, especially if your home is again built before 1978. And I'll send these slides to, or I'll put the slides in the chat if I can figure that out afterwards. So make sure your products do not contain lead. Avoid certain children's products and toys because some toys can be imported, antiques, and they can contain lead. Be safe in the kitchen. Again, imported ceramics and pottery dishes are glazed with lead, and it can contaminate the food when stored or prepared in these dishes. Avoid certain traditional medicines and cosmetics, such as Arzicon, Greta, and Palua, and cosmetics such as Kohl and Sindor that contain lead. And a lot of these things, again, are imported. And then use caution when eating certain foods. Avoid eating certain spices, candies, and other foods that were purchased abroad from informal or unregulated sources. And especially keep it away from children, especially if you don't know the origins. Take everyday steps to stay healthy. Give your child healthy foods, a balanced diet with foods that provide calcium, iron, and vitamin C may help keep the lead out of their system. Wash hands and toys. Make sure your child washes his or her hands and face after playing outside or with pets that may also carry lead particles from the soil on their fur or paws. Regularly wash their toys as you don't know what's on them. Remove all shoes when you enter the house. This is a practice that I preach. Take off your shoes when you enter the house to prevent spreading lead contaminated dust through the home. And be safe when working with lead, uh, with construction workers, carpenters, people that work in those professions. Have them change it to clean clothing before coming home. Keep their work or activity shoes and tools outside and away from everyone, including especially the children. Okay, and this is a point I want to make, and a big reason why I am here today is to get your child lead tested for lead exposure. Talk to your healthcare provider about getting a blood lead test for your child. A blood lead test is the best way to determine if a child has been exposed to lead. And based on the results, healthcare providers can recommend follow-up actions and care, which our program comes into play at that point. And we do the home visits, we do the case management, we make sure that you are being cared for it in a way that your healthcare providers can't provide. So we're just a little bit more hands-on with addressing the lead poisoning. And here is our contact information. For any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us. You can ask for me. My name is Naya. And depending on what the questions or concerns are, I'll be able to redirect you or answer them myself. And that is the end.
Thank you. Now, yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
I do have a child in city schools, and part of the physical every year is testing of lead. They ask, do you own your property or rent your property?
Yes.
Um, so if a person is tested at school, does your organization come into play after the doctor's visit, or can they just come to you for testing in general? Because not all parents get those physicals, and I don't know how good they are with making sure the kids have the physicals and telling them they can't come back to school until they get them. So where does it come?
So with that, we only get results if there's a lead level above 3.5. So
Okay,
so you can, if you get tested just to get tested with your provider and it comes back A-okay, then we don't get that information. We only get, again, the lead levels that are above a certain threshold,
okay,
because we only work with those parents that need the help, if that makes sense.
that makes sense. Yes. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Charlene.
And I had also heard too that there was the CDC had some issues or guidelines about artificial turf and lead being an artificial turf.
Yes, we received an email about that, unfortunately. So it's everywhere. And even in addition to the turf, um, there's also been reports of it being in those squeezable applesauces. And
Hmm.
that is because of the cinnamon used in those packs. A little bit earlier in my presentation, I talked about certain spices, and it is reflected even in that. And
Wow.
yeah, it's unfortunate because children are the primary uh
Target for those products.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, I just saw your comment.
That was the first time I heard about it being sweet. I was watching this guy and I'm like, how much sugar is he gonna put in there? And somebody else said something to him about the amount of sugar. And that's what he said, I wanted lead paint sweet. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, unfortunate. Oof.
And this
Oof.
was a grown man. I just was watching him like I'm like really astonished like how much sugar he's putting in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very unfortunate. I've never heard anyone say anything like that. Wow. But yeah, I'm here to form partnerships and really drive home proactive lead testing in our school system and with parents. We also have immunization testing on a monthly basis, and our next one is February 6th at the immunization clinic on Fayette Street. 1200 East Fayette Street, and we do these on a monthly basis.
Quickly, Corey and then Malik.
Okay, my question is, what signs are shown when lead is in the home? Like, I know that some houses in Baltimore face that. What signs are shown if there's lead in the home?
So, as far as physical signs, the most obvious one would be chipping and flaking paint. So anywhere where there's like scaly paint, um, chipping paint, paint that's lifting up, that would be the most obvious indicator that there's lead in the home. And then I guess you can dive further. Is anyone displaying any like problematic behavior? Like, are they like really cranky? Are they really aggressive? Are they a recluse? Do they show signs of some type of neurological issue or behavioral issue? Um, and yeah, you just want to look at both of those things. If you see it physically, that's one thing, but if you see it in behavior, that's another thing. And you could use those two things to be proactive with the testing to make sure that it's not an issue. However, if you do see the chipping and flaking paint, you should bring it up to your landlord or whoever, or if you're a homeowner. Uh, that's a large process. I can answer that on in detail over email or something like that. Um, Amars, are children tested at any age, or is there a certain age? So your child can be tested at any time, any age. However, with cases, we only service children 6 and under, and that is because of the developmental stage that they're at when they're under 6. And we just want to make sure those issues are addressed in that time period because it's very crucial during that time period. Afterwards, I don't know exactly what the process is for children that are 6 and over. Oh, thank you. That's amazing. That link.
Excellent.
But yeah.
Malik.
Yeah, to bounce back off of Corey, what is the how long should we wait for someone to show these symptoms? So does it happen like within years, months, or something like that?
So that's the thing. I don't think you should wait. I think if you have suspicions, like if you're thinking, how long should I wait? You should just go get tested. Get your child tested. I don't think you should wait at all, especially if you have suspicions or if you're having questions or if you're thinking like, what if? You should just, I suggest to just go get tested, just to peace of mind and make sure everything's good in the hood.
Okay. And then also like if I do, let's say I do have lead paint in my home that I'm renting. What is like the process? Is it like, yeah, like would you know the process of getting lead paint removed? I mean, or lead removed from the home?
So if you are renting, the leasing office or the landlord, they should be able to, if possible, get you into another space while they address that. Or they'll contact either us, Green and Healthy Homes, or DPW, Lead Hazard Reduction Program, to address those concerns of lead poisoning paint or lead paint, and be able to relocate you. Or that this is it's very lengthy. There's rent
Yeah.
escrow, there's tenant rights,
Mm-hmm.
there's a myriad of things that goes into this process. So, although I am knowledgeable of certain things, we have environmental sanitarians that will be more versed in explaining the process of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more thing. Could you put your information inside
Yeah.
of the chat because it kind of took it down too fast for me. Thank
Okay. No
you.
problem. No
Thank you.
problem.
That's all I have.
Of course.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Naya, for
Of
your
course.
presentation. It was quick, but it was informative. Kept us going, and you had a lot of questions, which is great. So everybody's thinking about it. And those schools are going through this process. So thank you so much.
Of
I know
course.
on your agenda, everyone, we have, oh, well, first and foremost, let me say Happy New Year to everyone because I didn't get a chance to because I have some technical difficulties. I'm working on a backup laptop right now. My laptop really crashed and died this morning. So I'm working, trying to get everything logged in. But glad to be here and looking forward to having you all being a part of our 2025 with PCAB. So, without further ado, we are all going to make a little bit of switch on the agenda. So, we want to thank Dawn Sherry for swapping with Stephanie Fay and Mark LeBeau for the budget. So, we want to get the budget piece presented first, and then we'll go into the AI strategies from there. So, without further ado, Mark and Stephanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason. Mark, do you want to kick us off?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the presentation for the district priority engagement or priority conversation, rather, for our district. Today is our first of 4 sessions we will be hosting for stakeholder engagement around the district priorities. So we are happy to be here with you all today to, again, share this information, engage in some conversation, and most importantly, get your feedback on the proposed district priorities. So without further ado, I am going to pass you on to Stephanie Fay, who is the budget director out of the Office of Finance, who will take us through the presentation. Steph?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Happy New Year. I'm happy to be here with my partner, Mark Laveau, and we will get started. Next slide. Here's our agenda this evening to take you through. We're going to talk about quickly how school funding works, the blueprint for Maryland's future, also quickly, the FY26 district priorities for the year. We're going to give you a little bit of a survey activity and then open discussions. And the first item that we're going to share tonight is a very exciting video that our students and comms team put together along with the finance team on how school budgets work. Mark, cue it up. Oh. I don't think we can hear it.
Everyone is not hearing?
No.
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, give me a chance.
When you do the share, you also got to share sound as well.
Okay, let me try that. Stop sharing and I'll share again. Can you all see the screen though?
We can see, there it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna try again. If it doesn't work, we will put the link to the video in the chat and you all will be able to review it in your time, okay? Sorry about that.
It's low.
There is sound, it's just low.
Budget should work for you.
How about now?
Understand is how much money we're talking about and where it comes from. Baltimore City Public Schools budget is nearly $2 billion each year. Of that, approximately 71% come from the state of Maryland, and 27% comes from Baltimore City, and 2% comes from federal and special funds.
That 2 billion number is largely determined by how many students are enrolled across the whole city school system. The more students in our schools, the more money we get. Since most of that money comes from taxes, that means most of the money comes from us. Therefore, it is important that we have a say in how much money is spent. With me so far?
The next thing to understand is how much money is distributed to each school. About 75 to 80.
Mark, the PowerPoint just, there you go.
Hey, City Schools community, it's time to talk about your school's budget. About 75 to 80% of the district's $2 billion budget goes directly to individual schools. But the other 20 to 25% also serve schools, but indirectly through services like trash removal, buses, NCA passes, school police, athletics, electricity bills, and etc. A portion of the overall budget also goes to district staff who help keep everything running smoothly across the city. The amount of money distributed to schools is determined based on the expected student population at that school each school year.
Some schools receive additional funding to serve students with disabilities, as well as students who are also in the process of learning English.
Some schools also receive additional funds if they serve families with low incomes. All of these factors help to ensure equity across our city.
The third thing to understand is that you get a say in how your school's budget is spent. This is the fun part. Once your principal knows how much money will be in the budget for the year, they get to determine how to use that money. This is why your principal needs to hear from you.
Principals are required to host 3 budget engagement meetings to share information and gather input and feedback from their school community. The first meeting is the priority engagement session, which is your opportunity to tell your principal what's most important to you at school. When you go to that meeting, be prepared to share what kinds of things you want to see at your school next year.
The second meeting is the budget forum, where your principal will present a draft of the school budget. Your principal should be prepared to show you how they implemented your feedback into the budget. When you go to that meeting, prepare to listen closely and ask questions to understand how your priorities were considered. You can also give feedback at that meeting since the budget being presented is still just a draft.
The third meeting is the budget review. This is where your principal will present the final budget that has been submitted to the district. Your principal should present any final changes that have been made to the budget based on the district guidance. It's important to note that some of your priorities might not fit in the final budget. In that case, this is a chance for you to help brainstorm other ways that students, parents, and the school community can come together to help meet any remaining needs. Remember, it's your money and it's your school. Let's take your school's budget meetings this year, make it work for you, and get involved.
A big shout out to our students and youth budget group that we put together for this year, who really helped put this together for the district and for our schools and for our kids. So I'm going to take you into the 10 stages of the school budget development, which were all just highlighted in the awesome video. So Mark, go ahead and hit that. The first 5 stages of our school budget development, and I put the dates next to them so you kind of have a sense and an idea of when these things happen. As you know, priority discussions happen once the school year kicks off to start thinking already about the following year. In September and October, we go through our enrollment adjustments where we've funded the schools for what was projected in the fall, what was projected in the spring, and projected in the fall. And then we adjust those schools once school is opened after the September 30th date. Then the schools work on their school performance plans to make sure that they're aligned with what needs to happen throughout the school year. Right now, we are just finalizing something called enrollment projections, which is what we're already working on for the fiscal 26 and school year 25-26 budgets. And then the school community budget forums, which is what our awesome students just talked about in the video. And we'd love for you to get to your schools with your kids and meet with the principals and hear what they have to say about the budget development for this year. The remaining stages of our budget development would be the budget collaborative. So you saw that one of the students just mentioned there are these meetings happening right now, talking to the community and talking to the families about what the families and the students would like to see during the school year next year. They then, meaning the school, get their allocations and they start to put together their budget priorities and all of their items that they'd like to accomplish for fiscal 26. And they will then have another community meeting with the students and the community and the parents to share what they've put together. And during that time, we have something called a budget collaborative, where all of these schools meet with all of the leadership that supports them, human capital, finance, academics, our team here, communications, family engagement, and we help them craft their budgets. Then, as we talked about again in the video, in March, there will be another touch point for you all to head out to the schools and meet with your principals and communities to understand what it is that they put together in the budget so that they can share with you what the final budget looks like. Then we have the board vote in May, and then staffing begins to start the new school year. Okay, and just really quick glance, we're going into our fifth year of Blueprint for Maryland's Future at a Glance, which was formerly called Kerwin quite a bit. And it's a new funding formula, not so new anymore. The major aid formula provided through the state and local consists of dozens of separate components. There's a big piece in tracking expenditures, so the state and everybody else is making sure that the funds that we get, we're spending and allocating correctly. And again, as you saw in the video, 75% actually to 80% of the funds that we do receive go directly to our schools. Okay, just a quick touch point. I'm sure as you all have been watching the news, You've heard the governor talk about the major deficit. It's a large deficit. It hasn't happened in many, many, many years. And as you know, again, from the video, we get a large portion of our funding through state dollars. So we just wanted to hit on these two items to make sure that everybody understands that it's going to be somewhat of a challenging year this year. You know, as the state budget cycle is shaping up to be challenging and the lawmakers facing a growing deficit, the end of the pandemic, which we did get an influx of wonderful funds to do a lot of great things. You know, and there's a new administration in our federal government, which could also shift and change some things moving forward. And as we approach the budget planning this year, we hope that the state will continue to honor its commitment to address all of the inequities and find that the blueprint for Maryland's future, but also the awareness that our attention should really be on what we have been working on and what's been working well and sustaining, rather than adding anything new or not much new for this year, and then looking forward into future years to be able to continue to build on the budget. Okay, and the district proposed priorities, which should be very familiar to you. They are some of the same priorities that we adopted last year. Improving attendance and dropout re-engagement, super important. Of course, supporting mental health will continue to be an ongoing priority. Accelerating student achievement in literacy and math, and then building college and career readiness through secondary success and innovation. And what we're going to do here is we're going to put these slides up. I'm going to give you a minute. I don't want to read a slide to sort of deep dive a little bit into each of these district priorities, because when we get to our survey, we're going to ask you for your thoughts. So we'll go ahead and give you about a minute to read through these, and we'll go to the next slide. And the other two priorities for you to read through.
Excuse me,
Yes, sure.
real quick.
Yeah.
Since we are live streaming on YouTube, and it might be some people who isn't as well as reading long paragraphs, could we just go back and you
Of course. Absolutely.
abbreviate it for us, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, improving attendance and dropout re-engagement. In order to learn, children need to come to school and stay in school. We will continue to invest in programs that support student attendance and help identify and overcome barriers to consistent attendance, as well as our re-engagement center, which helps school disconnected young people get back on a path to high school graduation. And then to support our mental health, city schools will continue to invest in our students and families' mental health and wellness. In addition to city schools' own social workers and psychologists, the district will continue to invest in our expanded school behavioral health program across all schools. We will also increase our capacity to provide crisis response services to schools affected by violence or loss, and continue to support individual students through home visits and wellness checks. And for our last two priorities, in accelerating student achievement in literacy and math, city schools will continue to focus on literacy and math foundational skills to ensure that all students get high quality instruction, and that those with academic challenges to overcome receive the additional support they need to access their academic potential. We personalize learning through the use of ongoing assessment that drives small group instruction, and our literacy and math coaches provide direct support to the teachers of all grades as they support students' development. Tutoring and credit recovery programs offered both during the school day and in extended learning opportunities offer targeted instruction and support. And then for building college and career readiness, City Schools will continue its investment in enriching the high school experience to ensure students are college and career ready. Our secondary success and innovation programming includes ninth grade on track, which builds student connections and relationships and ensures that they are on path to graduation. Increase work-based learning, mentoring, and shadowing opportunities so students better understand their college and career options, and opportunities to earn college credits through including dual enrollment and AP and IB courses taken for college credit or apprenticeship and CTE fields. We will also continue to expand our post-secondary advisement to high school students through career coaches, school counselors, and post-secondary advisors. Mark, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, folks. So this is the point where we would like you to have your voices be heard by taking the survey attached to this QR code. So we would like you to take your phones out and direct it towards that QR code. I do see some hands up, and we will entertain some questions in a bit. But in the meantime, please take your phones, direct it to this QR code, and complete the survey, which will ask questions around the 4 priorities that was just presented. Yeah. And also, as I said, this is our first of 4 stops for stakeholder engagement around the district priorities. We will be hosting a session on this coming Saturday at Patterson High School. And this session is very unique. This is for our multilingual families. And we will be hosting this session in 7 different languages, direct in those languages. So if you are an English speaker only, I would not recommend this session for you, because you will either have to be able to speak Spanish, French, Tigrinya, Kinyarwanda, Swahili, Arabic, or what's the last one? Persian, I believe. No, yes, it is. So this information that we just shared with you would be delivered directly in those languages. Yes. So while folks are filling out their surveys, we can entertain some of the questions. I see some hands up in the chat. I see Malik Parker. Feel free to come off of mute, Malik, and ask your question.
All right. Thank you. I just want to say thank you again for coming and appreciate the flash show. But my question is, are there opportunities for parents to review a sample school budget to understand what they're looking at and during those budget meetings with the schools, with their schools, I'm sorry.
Yes, that actually happens in the second phase of the school level budget engagement process. We are about to close off the first phase, which is the school level priority engagement sessions, which is, as you heard in the video, where school leaders engage all stakeholders around priorities that they would like to see added to the school budget for the upcoming school year. So the next phase is where they actually talk about where the dollars and cents are placed in that budget towards those priorities. And that's where school leaders actually share the budget tool or snapshot of the budget with their stakeholders. I had the privilege of presenting with one of the school leaders, Mr. Principal Pinkney, at a session last week. And he shared how he engages his stakeholders by showing them actually going into the tool and plugging in the numbers per the priorities and showing them how it shows up, whether they would stay in the red or they are in the green or they balance their budgets accordingly. So yes, stakeholders do get an opportunity from school leaders to look at the budget in its draft form. I hope that I was able to answer your question.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Shate, I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, you got it right. Thank you. So I guess I have questions, but I don't know if it's more feedback and questions. So we definitely want parents and families to be like active participants in the budget process. And, we want to make sure that they have the knowledge that they need to understand school budget. So if I'm getting a timeline right, so as parents are participating in these budget meetings, the three or so meetings I think that school principals have to have, um, are they just more or less, is the expectation for parents and families to kind of just share what they are looking for their school to spend for the next school year? And then if that's the case, I kind of want to piggyback off of what Malik's question was about, access to just, I guess in general, just access to resources so parents can have some knowledge on what does a sample school budget look like, not necessarily their schools, but just something in general. What would a sample school budget look like? Are there financial literacy resources for parents so that they can really be active participants in a process? I guess that's some of my feedback that I'm just curious if that's something that the district have thought through or anything.
So along the way, right, we are supporting with building the capacity of our families as well to really engage in these conversations from an informed standpoint. It is not a very attractive topic, to be quite honest, because sometimes schools have to scramble to get their families to come out to engage in this conversation. But we have built tools in place to help our school leaders really engage families in an authentic manner in this conversation. And to also make them understand why it's important for them to be able to give voice and their input and feedback in this process. I think your question about the actual budget tool and what it looks like, I really wish that this session from Principal Pinkney was recorded, that we could share broadly to demonstrate how he engages his stakeholders in this conversation to, again, really honor their voices and demonstrate to them. I think it's also a learning activity, a two-way learning activity where they really get to see how this money is operated, how it's allocated, how resources are factored into those conversations as well, like after school programs and working with partners to support other resources coming into the school. So we it's a work in progress, to be quite honest.
Okay.
With you. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure that I speak on, I guess, behalf of PCAB when I say that we're just hoping to continue to share as much resources as possible for parents, especially when we're encouraging them or our end to be involved in things like this in their schools. And so if there is resources on the district side beyond just what y'all share, which has been helpful, and that video that y'all share, that's something that we shared in our last public meeting. So we're definitely trying to push out the resources, but again, I just think when it comes to really being active participants in the school budget process, we want to be able, because this happens every year, right? So this is a conversation that is going to continue every school year. And so if we're able to share as many resources as possible for our parents and families to be active participants in this process, and that will help our community, right? So that's just something that I'm just throwing out there. So maybe if that's something that isn't available for this school year, then definitely, again, obviously, it's something that happens every year. So thinking about how maybe even a district can engage PCAB in how we're sharing resources for parents and families to have an understanding of what it looks like to be an active participant and advocate for their families and their school community and things like that. That would just be helpful for us moving forward. So
Any support in that regard, we'll be happy to collaborate with you all in that endeavor. Corey Witherspoon.
Yes, I know Dr. Santalisa is big on student wholeness, and I love that. Especially highlighting attendance, re-engagement, mental health. Also, I'd like to lift up community school coordinators. What they're doing in the schools are amazing, and I know we're in a deficit. But I would like for if we could amend the prioritization. Definitely community schools, because they're doing what others didn't think about, making sure young people have enough clothing, making sure they have enough food. They're really doing a yeoman's job and making sure that young people are feeling good about themselves. So I want to go and lift up making sure that we do what we got to do for community schools and community coordinators as well.
Thank you for that contribution. And I think the Chief Hike Hubbard, Tina Hike Hubbard, is online and probably wants to contribute to responding to that. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. And thank you for that comment, because I'm a big community schools champion. I just want to offer that the community school strategy is in the student wholeness strategy, right? So it is there. It may not be called out as explicitly as you would like, but it is there. And I think that is important. And then I also just want to offer that because the CPG, or concentrations of poverty grant dollars, are what is utilized for community schools, every single school in Baltimore City currently is designated as a CPG recipient. We are good on that strategy for now, right? So I think if there's future conversations about budget cuts, or in the future, we would be happy to come back and share that with everybody to make sure you're aware. But right now, we're solid in that space. But I thank you so much for elevating that, and I just want to make sure to make the connection that it is part of the school wholeness or student wholeness strategy. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you for that response. Thank you, Corey. Warwick St. John.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, I dropped the question in the chat, but I figured it might just be easier to ask directly. And so as someone who's really trying to participate as a parent with 3 children in the Baltimore City Public School System, I appreciate the transparency and putting the line items to the budget out there. But there's a couple of things that I'm not clear on. Number one, when those priorities are submitted by community members like myself, how do I know what priorities actually make it into the budget? And number two, because you're sourcing stuff from different people across the entire school system, across the entire city. So I don't, to me, it's not clear that you have, I don't know, half a dozen priorities that are community priorities. And then secondly, at the end of the school year, when it's all said and done and the dust settles with the budget, I don't see a scorecard. I don't see a report card that says, here were the priorities, here was what was allocated, here's how we fared. We did well, we did not do well, so that we can then use that information for the upcoming budget. If that happens, maybe it does happen, but it's not public, or if it is, I don't know where to find it.
Thank you for that question. I just want to speak quickly on the school level, and I'll pass it over to Stephanie to respond on the district level. On the school level, with the priorities, which, as I said, we are wrapping up the first phase where stakeholders are giving input on priorities at their respective schools, right? At the next level, at the next phase, rather, for the community budget forums, school leaders are going to be using that information to inform, to also probably be considered or included in the budget development. And during their presentations, during the budget forums, they have to show what are the 3 top priorities that came up for their respective school communities, right? And they also need to demonstrate how they were or were not able to utilize these or include, these top 3 priorities inside of their school budgets. We asked them to be extremely transparent in that process, right? And be honest about it as well. So at the school level, that kind of accountability and transparency is strongly encouraged amongst our school leaders. And I would pass it on to Steph to share what happens at the district level.
Yes, and I just put, thank you, Mark. Thanks for the great question, because it is a lot and everybody gets asked lots of, what do you think and what do you think and where does it land? So on the district level, holistically, once our board and then city council votes on our budget, we distribute and then put on on our website. It's called the budget book. And it's long, but it's kind of fun to read through if you would like to. And that is where every single thing that we're doing for the upcoming budget lands, explanations. It deep dives into all the different departments and the priorities. It gives you dollar figures. So if you ever wanted to take a quick gander, I put the budget page from the website in the chat. It's a great place to take a look. We usually have a couple of years worth of those budget books listed on the website, and that will be published once the budget is voted on and approved.
Yeah, but I think that's part of the challenge is that
Yeah.
it's overwhelming for parents who aren't financial professionals. And so I guess either someone from your group needs to come back to PCAB and sort of walk us through it, or give us a digest version that says, here are visual indicators, up arrows, down arrows, charts, whatever, that say, here's where we are. Because that level of detail may be absolutely pertinent for you and for school administrators, but for parents and community members who don't aspire to be budget experts, we still would like to participate in the process since those are our dollars. Thank you.
Hear you. Thank you.
That's a great suggestion, Mr. Shinja, and we'll definitely take that into advisement. I know we might have missed some questions in the chat. We will be sure to supply the responses to those questions to the PCAB board, and they can then submit the responses to folks who are participating on this call. But again, thank you all for those questions. And I hope everybody took advantage of the time to give us some feedback via the QR code to fill out the short feedback and input survey that we had out there. And please, again, let me go back one slide. Even though I said the multilingual families session is on this Saturday, we also have a community partners session on January 21st at 4:30 p.m. Via this flyer, we'll share broadly. You can join that virtually. And we do have a session that's geared specifically to our city schools youth on January 22nd. That will be held in person at Dunbar High School. From 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. We'll be providing transportation for many of our young people to take advantage of this opportunity to give voice to their input and feedback on these priorities. And we want to thank you all for your input today. Steph?
I echo your sentiments, and also if anybody wants to email me directly, I am happy. And Shartay, we have this wonderful youth working budget group. We meet monthly. We've been teaching them how to read the budgets, how to work on enrollment adjustments, how they can work more closely with their principals. And I just wonder if we can start thinking about for next year, either broadening that group and adding our parents and communities into that, or maybe creating our own. So feel free, folks, to email me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions and talk through anything that's on your mind.
That's great.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you both for your time and sharing, and pivoting to jump in real quick, which is great. So a lot of information. We just did our budget meeting at our school, the first phase of it. So just going over the priorities, which is exactly the point. And next phase, we're ready to go. So like this is the time.
Awesome.
It's the time of the year.
Awesome.
So thank you all for your leadership and support in this area. And we will now move on to our next presenter, which is Ms. Dawn Sherry. And Dawn is the Director of Virtual Learning and Instructional Technology. So it's going to go over the generative artificial intelligence guidance for review and some feedback. So Dawn, without further ado, I am going to pass on to you.
Perfect. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
We can.
Perfect. All right, perfect. So good evening, everyone. I'm Dawn Shivey, Director of Virtual Learning Instructional Technology, and I have with me from my team, Natalie. She's going to wave, Natalie Peoples. She's from my broader team with 21st Century Learning. And Natalie's going to be monitoring the chat, dropping some links for you all, and really recording any feedback and items in the chat so that we really have record of everything that you share. So tonight we are going to come to you. Natalie's going to first drop in the chat a quick survey. If you have an opportunity, you can do it with your phone just to say who is here and is giving us some feedback. It's really fast, so we'd love if you could do that. While you're doing that, I'd like you, we have a quick icebreaker. I am going to have to go through a few things quickly because I think I'm down to 20 minutes instead of 30, so I will do a little bit of that. But I would love to know if anyone uses artificial intelligence, how often they use it, and what tool they use. And so if you would drop that in the chat, that would be lovely. We'll talk a little, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, I'm going to show a little preview of that in a minute, but I just want to get a feel for where folks are. So I see a yes weekly work. What tools are you using and how, and what are you using them for? That would be helpful. You can come off mute or you can put it in the chat. We would just love to know that to get a feel, and that's for everyone as well. Great. Chat, Gemini, I'm a Gemini fan myself, personal preference, right? Some folks are fully chat. We got creating emails, searching the web. Great, genealogy, didn't think about that. Multiple times, great. So this is really great. Lots of chat seems to be just the one that is being publicized a little more. So we see that a little more frequently out there. Well, that is great. For those of you that are like, what are you talking about? We'll share a little more in a moment. So thank you for that. You can continue to drop that in the chat. Natalie is taking note of those pieces for us as well. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the guidance and give you an opportunity to give us some feedback this evening. We did pull, we had a larger work group to create this guidance across the offices here. And we also looked at both folks across not only our state, but other states. And we also looked at these organizations. Teach AI, we really got a lot of information from, and we adapted some of their tools to meet our needs. We have been getting a lot of feedback. You are one of our last groups for feedback just because of timing, but we are getting feedback from these groups, and then we will have a public session in February. So if you have others that you think would like to give us some feedback, that information will be coming out through our communications team soon for that session in early February that you can have them to join. And that we will also have in Spanish translated as well. So all of you are already using artificial intelligence, most likely. And I say that because, oops, sorry, because it is really machine learning, and it gave me a thumbs up or a hand or you know, however you want to indicate. But if you are using face recognition on your phone, or you use Google Maps, or you have an Alexa or one of those tools in your house where you'll say play something, right? It's really using machine learning and helping you to get the information that you need. However, when we talk about generative AI, we are talking about tools like Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, and we're talking about, and you see in this bottom right-hand corner, where we can go in and search. And so I'm going to enlarge that for a moment, just for my friends that may not be as versed in generative AI. But I'm going into a tool like this and I'm asking it to give me some information. So I'm asking it with a prompt. And in this case, the example is around, tell me about the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean. So it's gathering that information and giving it to me in this way. But it can also generate content. So I can also say, give me a poem about the Pacific Ocean, but do it the way Dr. Seuss did his poetry. And so I'm asking it to do it in that style, and it comes up with a new, this is not a poem that's already been written. It was created by Gemini, and it has the style of rhyming that Dr. Seuss used. So there's just lots of opportunity to create new content within generative AI, not only for text, but you can create images. I'll highlight some that we've created for this deck, and you can create, music and video. The video technology is really evolving, and so all of those pieces are coming, and there's great opportunity within it, but there's also guardrails that we need to put in place around the use of that technology. So why we need it, I'm just going to highlight a little bit here, is really to make sure that our students are, we are falling within our security and privacy policies to make sure that what we're using protects our privacy of our student information, and that folks know how it can be used in a positive way, but they also understand potential risks and how you need to look at what the responses are that you're getting from those prompts and look at them in a way that you're really determining whether they're appropriate. And then the academic integrity piece, and we'll highlight that more deeply as we go through the deck, and how we cite when we're using something from AI or any other tool. And so those are kind of the highlights. If you look on the right, and you'll notice we are citing throughout when we are putting something that was AI generated, but this picture is not an actual dog. That is an AI generated dog. And you can see the specific prompt that we put in: image of a terrier, brown and white, playing in the autumn leaves, golden hour, lens flare up, shot from the lens flare visible, shot from the ground looking up. This picture was created based on that prompt. And so that gives you an idea of what the machine can actually create. So we think there's can be great power in that if it's used appropriately. So we today are going to talk a little bit about the guidance. The draft guidance, Natalie just put the link in the chat, and I will queue up the pages that we'll be talking about on the next slide as we go along. But this is intended for any use of AI within city schools. So it's mostly students and staff, right? And it's only for generative AI. And it really is not saying don't use it. It's saying we want to have some guardrails around it. And as we do that, we're keeping in mind, again, safety and privacy, that we are supporting the outcome of how we can support students with using AI. And there's some really great opportunity for that with tools that have AI embedded within them, that we are helping our students be ready for college and the workforce, because they may be using these tools in those spaces, and we want them to have the opportunity to use them before they get to those spaces, so they have an awareness and really can be really versatile within the space, and then that we can help our staff, right, to use these tools in a way that supports what they're doing for students. So that's kind of the overarching piece. And then we're going to get into the nitty-gritties. And the first one is the guiding principles. If you are actually in the document, that's on page 2, section 4, and it goes into more detail. But the key pieces here are, again, helping students achieve goals, connecting to our existing policies and regulations as a district. This is guidance because we already have policies around grading and reporting and how, you know, how students should be citing and not using material from books or from research as their own, but they should be citing it. And if you don't, that's called plagiarism, right? And so when we do that with AI, it's not, the guidance is coming from the grading and reporting, but the vehicle for plagiarism could be the artificial intelligence. So we want to make sure that we're calling out these things and what is appropriate and what is not. So we call out that policy within this document. We call out the bullying policy. We call out non-discrimination policy and acceptable tech use. And so we're making sure that we're referencing back to those policies. And within those policies, we're calling out the piece around AI. And that we are educating our staff and students about AI. This is kind of step one. We are already working towards professional learning that we will be doing, and we'll talk about that at the end of this deck, but that is the next step. And then looking at potential tools that we may move forward with recommending for use, and that will fall within that professional development as well. And then the biggest piece here is the agency, and I'm going to talk about that on the next slide, but it really is about empowering the user within the tool, but ensuring that the user knows that whether that user is a staff or student, that they need to check for quality, right? The computer, it's not on the computer to make sure that what you put in matches the type of response you need. It's on you to really discern the information that you're getting back. And then for us, as we go along, we're going to continue to look at the guidance and adapt it and revise it as needed. And we're not calling out that we're doing it on a specific cadence, because we could say, hey, we're going to do it in a year, and some big discovery or some additional use of AI in K-12 education could evolve really quickly. And we want to be able to pivot and make changes as needed based on how this technology is kind of getting better along the way. So from there, we move to appropriate and inappropriate uses of artificial intelligence. And these are just, this table just shows a few of them. This is on section or page 3 through 6 in the document, section 5. And so I'll just highlight a few here for our friends that are on Facebook. And that is, AI can be used for personalized tutoring. It can be used to generate ideas and topics for assignments, and we'll talk about that a little later. It can be used to differentiate content, and for for teachers to figure out, how can I differentiate something for this particular need of a student. And then some inappropriate uses I already mentioned, which is plagiarism, right? Could be cheating, those types of things. So we want to keep those in mind. The biggest piece here, which is on the bottom, is again, we still have to do the work, we as the user. So if I'm putting in a prompt and I'm asking AI to give me an idea for a particular assignment, or I'm asking it to help me write that email that some folks said was how they used AI, I need to put in a specific prompt based on the type of email I want to write. What is the audience for that email? What types of content do I want to be engaged? And I then need to look at the response from the AI and determine whether it meets the need that I have, or if I need to put in a more specific prompt to get at that need. I also need to look at that response and say, is it responding in a way that's biased? Was my prompt to begin with biased? And what does that look like? And so there's some training around those pieces that we'll need to do as well. The metaphor we like to do here is the metaphor of riding an e-bike. So think about an electronic bike. If anyone's seen an e-bike or an electronic scooter or something like that, do you still have to do work when riding an e-bike or a scooter, electric scooter? And so the short answer is yes, right? You do. And so think about what you have to do. You have to pedal. You have to steer. You have to balance, right? And so that electronic bike or scooter makes it easier for you, right? It's more efficient. You might get there faster, but you still have to do the work. And so there's a that's just something we want to highlight for folks. So when we get to academic integrity, which I already mentioned to some degree, but this is a big piece for us. This is on page 6 of the guidance, section 7. It really is connected back to grading and reporting. And the bold part here is the most important. I mean, it's all important, but this is kind of summarizes it in a nutshell for you, is that if I am getting writing or images or a video that is created by the artificial intelligence, by Gemini, by ChatGPT, and I am then claiming it as my own work, now not citing it, then it is plagiarism. And so there's a space around when is it appropriate and not appropriate to use AI, and then making sure that I am citing when I do use one of these products. So here, I want you to think about, and I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly, is, is it acceptable to use AI within the process of writing a paper? And so think around that. We don't have time to really have a conversation around it, but what I will say is I think most of us will agree that it's acceptable to not use AI at all and write the paper on our own. And that it's not acceptable to have AI write the paper and then say that I wrote it myself. However, there are lots of gray areas. When you are writing a paper, there are lots of stages within that writing. And so there might be stages and spaces where AI can support you. And that depends on why you're writing the paper. So what is your teacher trying to learn from you as a student, or what are you trying to practice as a student, right? If I'm trying to practice my ability to write an outline, or my teacher, it's the beginning of the process and I'm being graded on how I create an outline, then it might not be appropriate to use AI. But if we're at a different stage and my teacher really wants to see how I can formulate a paragraph, and my teacher allows me to get ideas from AI, and that's an area that I'm cool with, and I'm not trying to practice that, then this may come in handy and really support me as a learner, because I might have that need that may be my sticking point for me, that I really struggle with that. So again, it depends on the purpose of the assignment. That being said, we have created an acceptable use scale, and Nellie just put the link to that document in the chat, but it's also here, but the link might allow you to look at a larger scale. Many of our colleagues across country are creating these, and we created one for our district, but it really is around the teacher being able to say, this assignment that we're doing, we're at a 2. So you can use AI to get some ideas and to do some basic structure, but you can't use it beyond that. And here's how you have to disclose. Here's how you have to cite. You can actually cite by putting the link to the chat in the document. And so again, this use scale would be part of ongoing professional learning for educators. As we continue on, and I'm going to I normally take questions there, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to take any questions at the end. And then the questions in the chat, Natalie is jotting them down on our document as well. And so the other piece is really around the bias and helping folks to understand the bias and to think about not only their prompt, but how to really look critically at responses. And then, the bias, there's a whole section on that on page 5, and that's section 6. And then the security and privacy. We have all applications in city schools have to be approved for both the secure measures, right, that they're protecting privacy of students, and then there's a data privacy component as well. And so any tool that we would be recommending moving forward, we would meet those needs, right? Would meet the criteria of city schools, and that's just one part of it, but that's a very important part. But we also want to make sure that if students are using any of these tools outside of city schools, that they know that you shouldn't be entering personal identifiable information. You shouldn't be entering your full name, right? You shouldn't be entering your address or anything confidential. You shouldn't be doing that in any tool, and you really shouldn't be doing it in AI either. And so those are just some pieces that we would want to emphasize. And that is on page 6 and 7 and kind of interspersed throughout the document as well. And so what's next for us, in addition to, continuing to hear feedback, revising the guidance, we are going to have opportunities for folks to learn a little more about the guidance, but then we're working to develop a year-long arc for how to use AI for educators for next year. And then we'll be doing some things in the spring around the guidance once it comes out, and really how to understand and use AI appropriately based on the guidance. And then we'll begin to look at any potential recommended apps for students and staff to utilize that are artificial intelligence apps that are what we call large language models, like Gemini and Copilot or ChatGPT, or tools that are powered by those large language models. And that was a lot. This is the survey link that Natalie put in the chat. We're hopefully going to have an opportunity to hear at least 1 or 2 people and any comments. And we have the comments from the chat, but you can also complete this survey now or at another time in the next week or 2 to give us any additional thoughts that you have. So I'll pause there to see if there are any comments, questions.
So Dawn, we did have 2 questions. One was, will there be parental controls or oversight features?
So great question. That's a great cue. I did not mention this. So in the large language models, Chat, Gemini, Firefly, students have to be 13 with parental consent or 18 without parental consent. So there are age limits on those. So we would, if we were using them at the school level, we would be looking at middle and high school if we start to use any of those models with the teacher, right? In terms of parental controls, if you're using them at home, again, you would just want to be monitoring like you do in the school, right? If you're using your own devices at home. I will say that if a student is using a city schools device, there's a different level of monitoring that happens and how we know what they're on, and that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of parental controls and oversight, there is that age limit piece. And then the built-in prompts. So I think there is a space to do within our training and within our kind of tools and supports, some pieces around prompt frames for students, and really having an opportunity for students to have a prompt frame that they can fill information in so that they're doing things in a way that are not biased, right? And they're able to understand how specific a prompt, how more specific a prompt is, the better result you're going to get. And I think that's a piece that we'll do with teachers in professional learning, and we'll develop some resources for them. And then they will in turn be able to turnkey with students. I think that was Warwick's question. And was there another one that I missed?
No, those were the 2 that I saw.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So I will just say that one of Natalie's team members, Rob, has been working really, really closely with me on this. He is sorry he couldn't be here tonight. He unfortunately has the flu, and so he is recuperating, and Natalie filled in at the last minute for him, so I appreciate that. But our information is here. You can certainly email Rob or myself with any feedback or questions around this, and just let us know. And I am also interested to see what happens along the way with AI, not just in terms of us, but as it continues to grow and develop. It is, folks are either super excited about it or scared to death of it. I'm super excited about it, but also know that there needs to be guardrails, and that we need to, ensure that there are measures for folks to use it, in the right way. So, and we got some super excited in the chat. I appreciate that, Charlene. All right. Well, thank you. We'll stay on in case anything else comes up in the chat, and we'll Well, so I'll send it back to you, Mr. Green, so you can close on out.
Thank you so much, Dawn. It's been a pleasure. AI is, definitely a friend of mine. So I enjoy it, love it, and truly want to see how far we can go with it and where we can take it to. So it's exciting and how we incorporate it into what we do. Thank you all. You can stop sharing. And I believe, do we have any other slides or anything, team?
We just have two. So, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I got it. All right, so this is a resource from the Teachers Democracy Project. They are hosting a Parent Power Fellowship to help parents grow PTOs and just learn about PTO, school family councils, and things like that, and just organizing in general. Um, so they have their sessions in February and March, and those will be every Thursday in February and March from 5:30 to 7:30. And there's a link on this flyer, a QR code and a link if you're interested in, I guess, signing up for that fellowship. And then we just have one more. So this is the PCAB committee meetings so far. The ones that are coming up at least. So the policy committee is having a meeting on January 27th at 6 p.m. And they have their meetings every fourth Monday of the month. The teaching and learning committee has their next meeting on January 30th at 7 p.m. And their cadence is the last Thursday of every month, and then the budget committee's next meeting is February 5th at 6 p.m. And I think that's all we had. Jason, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
That's it. Just like you said, follow us on social media, sign up for a committee, sign up for our newsletter, and we look forward. Mr. St. John, you have a question real quick?
Yeah, just one last question. Obviously, PCAB has been around for a long time. And one thing I'd like to get access to is sort of the history of PCAB. How did this thing come to be? What is the actual legislation that authorizes it? I'd like to see that to get a better understanding of what the mission is here.
If you go right to pcabbaltimore.org, it's right on the website. It lists the history as well as the actual legislation, the legislative number that it was put in to make it happen.
Right, I will do some homework.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all. Appreciate your time. Oh, there was a question about, just right, crossing guards and how does that come about? Is there anybody on that can potentially answer that still? Like, is that a part of the school budget or is that from the district?
Jason, I can answer that one quickly. Yep, not a problem. The crossing guards are actually paid for through the mayor's office. That is one of the contributions from the city that we get at city schools. So they are not part of our district budget. Now, schools may choose to add one more or something like that if they wanted to, but the current agreement with the city is that they're paying for all of our crossing guards. And they actually work for the city, not for the district.
Great. Thank you so much. That answers that question for sure. And seeing nothing else, thank you, Charlene, for putting out the PCAB link on there from Mr. St. John. And without further ado, I will make a motion to close this meeting.
I move for adjournment.
I second it.
There we go. Thank you all for your time. Happy New Year again. Please stay warm
Amen.
And check your tires.
Check your tires. Yes. Stay warm and be good and get some service done on Monday. And just keep smiling.
Amen.
Right.
Yeah, have a good
Thank
night.
you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.